My name is Dr. Tyler Tolbert.
And I'm Dr. Soren Poppy.
And you're listening to The Fix Podcast,
your source for all things implant dentistry.
Hello, and welcome back to The Fix Podcast. I'm super excited. We have a very charismatic and capable guest today who has graced us with a beautiful cowboy hat, which I believe he threw in last minute. We're super appreciative of that. We're also both sporting some neon signs, repping our sets and stuff like that. So today we have on Dr. Nestor Marquez. I had the pleasure of meeting him fairly recently. It was at the last, I think it was the Orca. Was it the SI? No, it was Orca. I believe we met at Orca.
Yeah.
Most recently, that was the Orca Symposium in Vegas. Very, very cool. Great session, by the way. Definitely one of the most informative symposiums I've been in recent memory, and definitely had some heavy hitters for the full arch game. I think that as far as implant focused symposiums go, full arch definitely gets talked about a lot, but there's a big blend of, what implants look like in different dental practices, but this was like really specific to full arch. And there were just a lot of heavy hitters there, and it was really awesome meeting you. So we just had to get you on the show, and it took us a little bit of time to coordinate schedules, but it's finally happening, and I couldn't be more excited.
It wasn't all my fault all the time, man.
Oh, it was totally my fault. I take full accountability for this. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, it's good. I'm happy that you I remember in Vegas, you were like, "Hey man, would you mind being on the podcast?" I was like, "Dude, I love it. All right, we'll be in touch." I was with my wife that night, I remember. And so like the rest is history now. It's been a couple months and here we are, man. Thanks for inviting me.
No, for sure, man. I've been really excited to have you on, and I know Soren was really happy to, really excited to interview as well. But he's got a busy schedule too, and we couldn't quite make it happen. So I know he's got some FOMO right now. But yeah, man, I've been a huge fan of your work. If you guys don't follow Dr. Ness on Instagram, you've really got to see some of his clinical photography and what he's putting out there. Just some of the cleanest, most well documented full arch cases you'll find anywhere. And he does these really cool things where he draws on the clinical photos, talks about the techniques that were done, little nuances there that maybe not everyone can really pick up. But if you know what to look for, everything is just clinically executed so beautifully. He does a really great job of documenting that and sharing that. But before I get too into blowing smoke, Dr. Marquez, if you could just kind of just do us the pleasure of kind of just doing a brief intro of who you are, what your background is, your journey into dentistry, implant dentistry, all that good stuff.
Cool. Thanks, man. Well, first of all, thanks for all the accolades, or thanks for everything. Instagram just was a thing that I started probably about 7 years ago, and it was just literally I opened a different Instagram because my wife was like, "Nestor, you really shouldn't post gross and I think I was posting like wisdom teeth back then, like gross things on Instagram, like."
Yeah.
My mom, my mother-in-law at the time, not at the time, she's still my mother-in-law. She would be like, I don't know, I'm going to unfollow Ness.
Yeah.
So I opened a specific Instagram. I thought of Dr. Ness, and then that kind of started things out Instagram-wise, School-wise, man, I did all my schooling in Mexico, close to Mexico City. I was born and raised in Arizona, but I was, as I'm sure people that know me know, I was a bad teenager. Not that I'm completely good now, but I'm better. Yeah. And
you were a bad teenager. Now you're just a bad adult. Yeah.
Now I'm just a bad adult. My mom was like, "You know what? Reverse American dream, guys. We are leaving the USA and going to her homeland, which was like Mexico City area."
Cool.
And I was like,
cool.
"Oh, bummer, like what? We're leaving girlfriend, friends, almost gangs or whatever it was back then." And reverse American dream. We ended up straightening our paths over there actually, and I joined a church band, started going to church. I got better friends, I guess. Not I guess, I know. And then it was time for dental school. And at the time, I was like a heavy musician. Like I had longer hair than I have now. It was kind of like, I wanted to be Ringo Starr or, that look, where you're just like, you're a hippie in dental school. It was first year dental school. And I was like, actually, this is something that I probably haven't said before, is I flunked first year of dental school because I was not like there mentally.
Nice. That's a badge of honor, man.
Man, my dad was like, "Hey, Nestor, like, I don't know." I was like, "Dad, it's because I think I'm going to be a musician and we're going to tour the world and I'm going to he's like, nah, man, I don't think you are, man. I think I need you to do this, you know? I feel like that's one of the hardest, like, things my dad has done to me. You know? He's like, you're going to do
Yeah.
this. I think you've always kind of wanted dentistry. And I kind of did. You know, I have an uncle who was a dentist. And through him, I was like, oh, you know what? I'd like to be a dentist someday. And
Yeah.
yeah, that turned into me leaving music behind. I dropped out of a music school that I was going to at the moment, like for classical guitar.
Wow.
Much of a
Awesome.
music school thing, like professional musical, you know,
Yeah.
music. And from there on, man, it was like something switched in me. You know, I became like
Yeah.
team leader, group leader, and yeah, from there my grades started going up, and you better bet, man, probably just like you. As soon as we started pulling teeth, I was like, okay,
Oh,
whoa,
okay.
you know what I'm saying? Like, whoa, we
Yeah.
can do
Okay.
that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I can be a rock star of a different kind.
somehow like that, you know? And then yeah,
Yeah.
I left. I did my internship. Actually, this is how I started liking surgical stuff in a hospital with a maxillofacial surgeon, Dr. Arturo, and like he taught me so many things. Not full arch though. Nothing is full arch really in the outer world, so to say, of dentistry. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I did internship. I came back to the U.S. I didn't have money whatsoever at all, so I remember I got a job at a cooler, um, like a cooling place for lettuce, because here in Arizona, where I am at,
Oh, sure.
Yuma, Arizona, has a
Yeah.
lot of like lettuce, produce, and stuff.
Hmm.
So I got a job there. 3 months later, I quit the job. I went to church one Sunday morning for the first time, and the pastor was like, "Hey, why don't you turn around and greet your neighbor?" You know, I turn around, I see the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, which is my wife now. And I was like, oh, like I need to come back here, you know. I met my wife,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I can talk about love stories and stuff, you know. But um, then what happened is I started seeing that the type of I'm in Mexico, by the way. Like I work in Mexico, but I live in
Hmm.
the U.S. It's a
Okay.
really tricky thing there. I live in Yuma, Arizona, but 10 minutes from Yuma, Arizona, 10 minutes literally. That's my commute.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
Los Algodones, Baja California, Mexico, also known as Molar
Hmm.
City.
Hmm.
So 10 minutes every day back and forth. What happened is I started noticing that the patients that came in to look for work were needing implants, you know, like
Hmm.
dental implants. And I was like, oh man, like, okay, like single implants, cool. But then we would have these cases that would come and be like, hey, you know, you guys do the all on four. And I was like, ooh, like that just sounds like hard dentistry, you know, like, well, no, we don't. But what we usually do is we call somebody in and they come in and help us do the surgeries, you know, or I guess we would say we did, but that it was a specialist, somebody
Yeah.
else
You're
that
going to
came in
farm
and
it
did.
out.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I didn't send them out. I had that specialist come into my clinic here.
Right.
So anyways, that I started noticing that the need for that, you know, of American people come into Mexico for more economic, uh,
Yeah. So was that mostly American people coming south of the border, or was it?
to this day, it's still
Yeah.
95% of our patients are
Okay.
American coming
Yeah.
south. Dental tourism, you know, which, oh man, that topic is big because, you
Of
know,
course.
we call it the race down to the
Yeah.
bottom,
Of
you know,
course.
prices in the
Yeah.
U.S. are dropping because of it. And
Hmm.
what the U.S. doesn't see is Mexico still hasn't played that card, but Mexico can also drop prices a lot lower, you know, like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
How low is too low, you know?
Where is the bottom? Yeah.
Where
Right.
is the bottom? Yeah, because
Yeah.
we're talking about different countries, different, you know, currencies. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of, you can definitely do an arch with bad materials for a lot cheaper here in Mexico. That's not something we do. You know,
Yeah.
we stick to high standards. We use good
Of course.
brands. We use everything. But there is that world of like, oh, let me get made in China stuff, you know, and then it goes
Yeah.
wrong. So
And how is a consumer to know the difference, right? Like it's just amnesty for you to be using good stuff, but you don't have to, you know?
exactly, man, exactly.
Yeah.
Unless you want, see, my view of that is as a Mexican American. I was born in the U.S., but, from Mexican parents.
Of course.
I want to make sure that things are done correctly here in Mexico, because you hear the horror stories. They're not all fake. There's
a stigma. Yeah.
There's a stigma, like, oh, don't go to Mexico, But I get it, I mean, there's good and bad everywhere, but maybe there's more bad here than there is over there. I'm not going to be that person, but we want to raise that bar to make sure that the standard here in Mexico is up to date, Anyways.
Yeah.
Where was I? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were just talking about how, you were bringing in a specialist to get all on four done. And then I'm assuming, of course, there was a transition to doing it yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I'm sure this might be a question in the podcast later, but schooling wise, implant dentistry, I went through some post degrees here in Mexico for implant dentistry. I never did maxillofacial surgery. I never did perio. I did. There's like little post degrees here in Mexico for implantology.
Okay.
What happened next was I got a mentor that did full arch, because a lot of people ask me like, Nestor, what's the best full arch school out there? And now I have an opinion, but I think I did it the right way. And the right way, if you ask me, is not through CE, which is hard. And I have an opinion on that, man. To me, it was a mentor that lives and works in the same town that I do. Why is that different than saying, oh, Dr. Nestor is your mentor, although he's 1,000 miles away
somewhere else? Yeah.
Like, sure, there's the mentorship that counts like that, and you hop on calls and stuff. But what I did, and I think that I did right, is I was bugging Dr. Ever, who we're going to give a course with him later on this year. This is one of my first mentors. I was bugging him daily, man. When I started my clinic, my practice, I had 3 to 4 patients a week. So, like, I had a lot of free time, and
you had some time.
He took the best at, like, I was like, hey, Ever, like, do you mind if I come over to your office, man? He's like, no, I'm going to be doing full arch. I'm like, that's what I want to see, And I was there. Like, and I kid you not, I probably watched like 100 surgeries, and 100 is a lot, man. If you think about
to watch,
to watch, it's a lot, With me just being there, I was just there. Like, I had nothing to do, so I was there. And of course, I saw complications. I saw failed implants. I saw different approaches. I saw complicated extractions. I saw broken buccal bone. I saw everything, and it was, I wasn't really practicing though. But here again, one of our problems these days is that I see a lot is you take a CE course and you go right to doing pterygoids or cygos or, like all I did, man, was all on 4, or all I saw was all on 4. He wasn't even doing pterygoids at the time. It was all on 4. Simple, 2 straight, 2 tilted. Maybe he did an M every now and then. And I was like, okay, like, wow, repeat. And I was like,
yeah.
And after me doing some studying, after me having taken some, diplomas on implantology and stuff, I said, you know what? I'm going to start with overdentures. I'm sorry, man. Like, it almost sounds like, oh, it's lame, but I think I did it the right way. And that's why, overdentures. And I started doing 2 straight implants, mandibular. And I did do 2 upper implants for overdenture. And I found out what that was later,
At least you figured it out, man.
I did, man,
some people are still figuring it out.
Yeah. And my mentor was like, hey, Nestor, I wouldn't do that again, But it was that separation from mentor and like, oh, I'm going to do it after watching 100 surgeries. But coming back to my mentor, like, hey, man, why did 2 single implants fail on top? He's like, oh, have you ever seen me do that, Nestor? I was like, no, but I've seen you place them on the bottom. He's like, listen, Nestor, blah, blah, blah. So, but my mentor was kind of there, I was like, hey, have you ever had this happen, Hey, have you ever had a patient get mad at you for this? Oh, Nestor, like, you want to talk about patient communication and dealing with patients? Because that's a whole different book.
Yeah.
And we somehow separate it. You think CE, I'm a badass surgeon, bring the work. Oh, man, I feel like we almost have to go through psychology school sometimes, and understand patients.
We do. Yeah.
So anyways, I started having problems. But I started doing more full arch, all on force. Then I started to all on force. Buried implants. I would not load.
No loading. Okay.
No loading. I was scared.
Hmm.
I was like, oh man, I don't know. Like that seems like it's got torque, but understanding I'd already seen it. I understood the principles, the 120 threshold. I knew, but I was scared to make the jump,
Yeah.
But it made me pace myself, take my time to get to where I am right now. Then I started loading, and then don't think I'm not saying continuing education is good. Like while I was loading and doing all these things, I was learning, I was reading books,
Of course.
I was going to courses, learning about it. But it was, for me, pacing myself. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm more comfortable with this. My stitches are not opening up as much anymore, or
Right.
or I have a good communication with my lab now. Now I'll do this. Now I'll do that. Then I started doing immediate load. This is probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And we started loading all the cases. And I started finding out what cluster failures were, and I started finding out how to deal with patients in a cluster failure and having to call in a specialist to do cygos.
Yeah.
And like, that's what nobody tells you these days is
Right.
I always call it, I used to have a hashtag that said full arch is a world. Like, it's not just open, place an implant or 4 implants and wait. There's so much more, There's the patient communication, there's the proper prosthetic design, the good torque, the good implant design, the techniques. What if this goes wrong? It's so much. Like, that's why we feel nowadays that full arch dentistry should be kind of like a post degree of itself. Like, it should have its own little thing because it's so much, It's the most aggressive thing we do as in dentistry. It's not a crown, a full mouth rehab. It's full arch.
For sure.
So anyway, man, yeah, that's a little bit of the upbringing, so far. My mentor was always there with me. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't calling him. I was like, hey, man, do you mind coming over? Actually, he would come over once or twice. He's done that.
Oh, that's great.
Imagine doing that instead of just, we're afraid of, what do you call it? He's your competencia means, like, because you're in the same town and you guys compete.
We don't want to train our competition. You're worried about scarcity and things like that.
Something like that. So like, there's even people these days who are like, oh shoot, I got to train that guy, but he's in my same city. I should not do that.
Yeah.
That's a way of thinking that we never adopted. And it was because my mentor was never like that with me. Although I work in the same town he does, and I do full arches that he could have done, That's not the mindset, man.
Yeah.
And I have the same mindset. There's people here in town these days that are like, hey, Dr. Nestor, like, can I come watch a surgery? I'm like, text me Monday. I'll tell you when the surgeries are this week. Get over here. And there's people watching my surgeries, man, for free, Although there's people that pay for that. There's people that are here in town that I want to bless and be like, you need to do this the same way. Come watch it, But it's because we're in the same place. It's because we don't have that mindset of like, I need to be the best and like there's nobody that can be like me. Like, if they learn it from you, they're going to learn it from somebody else, They're still going to learn it. People are still going to do cygos and they're probably going to mess up 5 cygos if you don't teach them the right way or you don't make a comment.
Right.
And then they'll find out the right way and it's not going to be you who helped out, Let's just help each other. So that's how I got to basically where I am. And then I started meeting people through Instagram and social media, got invited places. I started making more mentors. Now the type of mentorship that I needed wasn't in person because I could also already do full arch. I needed like little tips and little phone calls and little, I started doing pterygoids because of Juan Gonzalez. He let me come to Texas a couple of years ago. I was like, dude, like pterygoids, everybody's doing them. What's up, He shows me. I see him do it one time. By that time, man, I had already placed not thousands maybe, but I'd probably already done like 600 or 700 arches without pterygoids.
Yeah.
Before I did pterygoids, guys, listen to that. I probably did 500, 600 arches
That's a lot of case.
Simple all on fours before
Yeah.
doing pterygoids. Why is that
Right.
funny nowadays? Because everybody's starting up and it's like, yeah, I'm doing pterygoids already. Like,
Yeah, there's like a new standard now. Yeah.
that's the new standard. Like, if you're doing full arches and not pterygoids, you're really not that good. Like, and most of the cases that I've done, man, successful cases with 4.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Anyways, I saw Juan do it one time and I was like, oh, thanks, Juan. Like, I get it. We went through anatomy one time. He explained it, and that's a mentor to me. And then we have so many stories of doing surgery together nowadays where he still saves my butt that respect to whom respect is due, on little details that I'm just like, there's a saying that says in Spanish, here it goes. It says, más sabe el diablo por viejo que por diablo. And it translates to, the devil knows more because he's old than because he's the devil. And I've always attributed that to Juan Gonzalez because it's experience, man. That's the name of the game is experience. Everything is easy in full arch. It's very simple. If you think about it, Tyler, come on. If you think about it, it's easy. You open a flap, teeth, you cut the bone, you drill, you close it, you take a cool Instagram picture, you feel like a badass.
It's the same dance every time.
It's the same dance every time until one little thing makes it not the same dance, where you step on the girl's feet, and everything, and she screams, and like, it's not the same dance then.
Yeah,
and you're freaking out, and you start getting nervous, and you don't dance the same. That's what experience gives you, and that's where mentors come in, One other huge thing there that I would add to that is like, we seem to, Instagram can be detrimental in the way that we post so much and we get this amazing feedback from people that are our friends or people that there's a lot of fan groups out there, so to say. You're the best, GOAT, greatest of all time, bro. You're killing it, bro. You're the best in the industry. That when something bad happens, because your ego got in the way already, it's hard to reach out to people and be like, bro, what the hell did I do wrong here? So you're alone, ranger now. You're like by yourself because it's embarrassing to be like, guys, what did I do wrong here? Don't be that person. Anyways, man, ask me a question or something. I need to stop talking.
No, this is great. I'm taking notes as I go. Like, I don't like to disrupt your flow. No, I think that a few things that you touched on that were really valuable. I'm going to go all the way back to like a proper way to get into full arch. You talked about you have some opinions on great institutions to go through in terms of your schooling, in terms of your CE. All those are of course necessary, and you should do them. But you talked about the benefits of finding not just a mentor, but a local mentor, someone that you can be over the shoulder with, that's going to be locally there to support you. And that's a huge thing. And that's what I had for myself. My entry into full arch was absolutely mentored. It was my hand was held for my first 6 months to a year or so. Even though I still kind of did it at light speed, I still had mentors. You have to have that. And I totally agree with needing to have that abundance mentality. And that's really what's pushed our field forward. It's not, a few like really solid clinicians just being protective of what they do. It's that willingness to share. And I think by doing that, that's what's helped you elevate yourself and in terms of your full arch reputation abroad. And it's opened up so many doors for you just by being willing to help other people. And, full arch is still very much a niche thing. It's absolutely exploded. But I think that there's a ton of really bad full arch work being done. And it's necessary for the people who are doing it well and at a high clinical standard, who have seen the long-term associated with good versus bad cases, to help spread, what it really takes to accomplish these cases. Because the problem with full arch is there's a lot of short-term reward in it. There's a lot of long-term consequences. And so I think that that's something that's really fueled that kind of race to the bottom, is everyone's trying to do cheaper arches. They're trying to spring, they're swinging for home runs when a single would do, and they're taking on complex cases because they see it all over Instagram. And, maybe they accomplish it. They get something that screws in and they feel like they did something, only to find out later on that there were so many nuances they missed. There were so many problems they haven't run into yet that they're going to find later. And, they're, again, racing to the bottom, just setting themselves up for long-term failure. And it's so important for people like yourself that have been in the game longer to help, really show like, hey, this is why we're saying you need to walk, into this, and you need to have mentors, you need to have people you can bounce off of. And I totally agree with the bit about ego is like, most of the stuff I share, it's the better cases I've done. Like, there's no question about it. Like, you're definitely seeing like the top, 50 percentile of what I do. There's another 50 percentile that I'm not as quick to share. I would, but
I hear
it's
you.
it's like you
It
want the
is what it
flame
is.
emoji. You do.
Of course.
Right.
You want the flame emoji.
You do. It's very rewarding. And I think that when you're recording yourself and you're posting it and you're sharing it, it's cool to have all that positive feedback. But at the same time, it breeds hubris, and it makes us a little more closeted about where we fall short, and trying to learn from that. And it's so important to just be open-minded to getting criticism for people that have had more time in the chair and have been able to see the long-term follow-up on these cases. One of my personal mentors now that I turn to a lot is Dr. Clark Damon. So he really converted myself and Soren into placing a lot more pterygoids to provide additional support. And both of us had several hundred arches of just traditional on-4 under our belts before we went to his courses and started doing that. And, it's so great because every time I have a case I'm like super proud of it, I'm like, oh man, I absolutely nailed this. I'm going to show this to Clark.
Yeah.
Without fail, there's immediate feedback, and it's not badgering me. He's just telling me, you should have done this, you should have done that, look out for this next time, this is what's going to happen. And like, I get that immediate negative feedback that kind of balances out all the other fire emojis and stuff, and I learn from it. And it makes you a better clinician, and you have to be willing to be humbled to get better at this. You can't just live in an echo chamber of positivity.
Man. I love that. We say here in Mexico, el que se agüita pierde. Him who like feels bad loses. You know what I'm saying? It's very easy. Everybody likes to just be praised over something that you're like, dude, at least look at the badass picture I took, But like, we don't need praise, man. Like, we don't need it. If you really want, if you're in this for long term, and if you want to be a happy mental person, you want your cases to be successful, not your pictures. Who cares about the picture? Nobody sees if that beautiful all-on-6 became a cluster failure. You're not going to post it like...
Right. I'm just showing you the post-op,
I'm just showing you the post-op picture, or the X-ray.
Before they leave the office. Yeah.
Nobody knows if a patient became blue and swollen, or is calling
my God,
telling you you're a prick for, not
yeah.
giving them the
Every
right
time. Yeah. All the time.
Nobody
all the
shows
time.
you that. So
yeah, some of my like proudest cases, even some that I've put up recently, where people are like, wow, fantastic, looks really good. And I, surgically, it was a great case. They don't see the text I get from the patient the next day where they just look like they were just mauled by the hurt event.
Right.
And I don't post it either, but it totally happens, man. I mean, it's a tough world. And I think that, when you have that personal mentorship, you can see the more real side of it, the hard part of it, the part that, even keeps the best clinicians up at night. Like, that exists, and it's prevalent. We don't talk about it a lot.
I when I give a course, I always say that, and it's kind of to break the ice, because I'm fortunate to be a teacher to general dentists, maxillofacial surgeons, periodontists, and breaking the ice with them is like, all right, guys, listen, I got friends, I don't have enemies, or I don't think so, but I got friends, and some of my friends, I say, are people you look up to, and I might be someone you look up to, but I got friends that are like, mortals, Dr. Ness, mortals, gods, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People, everybody's like, oh, that, and I'm in groups with them sometimes on WhatsApp or something.
Yeah.
Guess what? They have complications.
Yeah.
You're saying the gods of full arch have complications? Absolutely. And sometimes the gods of full arch will text in the group and be like, hey, guys, send your prayers. This patient's having this complication. We're not sure exactly what's going on, if it's a medication they're taking, if it's this. Send your prayers, boys. And it's like, wait a minute.
Just cross your fingers.
Prayers, So like, that should humble anybody, man. Like, whether you're the best maxillofacial surgeon from your class, or you feel like you've done 300, 400 arches and you're a pro, it should humble you enough to be like, okay, so like, we're all in the same boat together, Sure, there's little stars, and like, there's Achilles in the boat, there's the hierarchies, there's a badass, but we're learning, and we're sharing, and we're just reminding you, like, no need to play the game of the king of full arches, like,
Yeah.
No need. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's a really refreshing note, and even me personally, like I kind of need that kind of reminder every now and then because it's so easy to just put people on a pedestal and just assume that everything they touch is gold, and it's not true. I mean, so much of what really occupies like the busy, successful surgeon's mind is their complications. Like that's what's actually going on in their minds. What the hell they're going to do about this case or that case? They're not even thinking about the one they posted. You know.
No, no.
Like, man, I got some other shit going on back here, that's got me diving back in textbooks trying to figure out where to go from here, So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good, dose of reality. And, one thing we try to do with the podcast too is we want to show the good and the bad. We want to show where things go wrong and where we get humbled because that's where learning happens. When the case goes super smooth, like I had one yesterday, it was just great. I mean, it was like a double. I posted it. It was a double. I did it in like an hour and 45 minutes. It was 6 over 6. It was just clean, pretty. Everything was right where it needed to be. But I learned nothing, like I got nothing from it. I'm not going to grow from that case at all. I'm going to grow from the cases where I really had to stretch myself and I really had to ask other people about what I could do in that situation. And maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't, but those are the ones that I actually grow from. And so, where I'm at is really just an accumulation of all the cases that made me sweat and make me question myself. It's not the ones where I pat myself on the back and I go share on Instagram and be like, hey, look what I did, Yeah.
The cases that you're like, when did I decide? Why did I decide to get into full arch dentistry again? Remind me why I started doing this or why I think it's a good idea,
Yeah. Of course,
I've had the cases where you're just like this, like you're doing the upper arch. The patient is either general or intubated or IV,
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't do it, man. Like I can't do it. Call somebody, man. I've called my brother downstairs, and I'm like, dude, I'm done, man. Like, I don't want to do this case. Like, we'll do the upper and we'll do the lower, like, in a month or so. And he's like, Nestor, dude, take a break, man. Come here. Take my gloves off. And he's like, what's going on, And we forget sometimes, man. Like, sometimes it's not even just the surgery. You might have some stuff going on back at home. You might have,
you bet.
Life is life, And I'm like, yeah, thanks, bro. You finish the case, and that actually lets you, that's a growth. I was like, dude, I can conquer the emotions that I'm having during a complicated full arch surgery too, Anyways.
Yeah. And that's so true. Like the mental and emotional component of this is like, no matter how, routine full arch becomes, you still have to be on, like when you go into surgery, like you have to be ready, you have to show up, you have to have a good night's sleep, you have to be adequately caffeinated or whatever it is that you pregame with,
Right.
And, I mean, you can't afford to give a patient, less than your best, and they've invested in this. And, there's a lot of things that can come about if you just, aren't on your game. And there's a lot of pressure that comes along with that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that, it's really easy to teach people the hows of doing full arch. It's like you said, it's really not that complicated. It's the part that is so immeasurable and can't be shown in terms of CE hours or grades or, diplomas or whatever you got. Is just that stomach lining, to perform when maybe you're not at your best,
Exactly, man. Exactly. That's something not so spoken of that is necessary. When I start, and maybe we'll talk about ways of the arches later, but when I start my course,
please.
A special portion, the first portion, and I say, hey guys, we'll talk about arches. This first portion is not exactly about arches, It's about, a little bit about mental health, a little bit about communication with the patient, what you should say to the patient, what you shouldn't say to the patient, why you should say certain things to the patient. I have a friend that says, hey man, teeth are easy. Teeth are easy. Full arch is easy.
Yeah.
It's who holds the full arch that's hard, Like
right.
You're placing it to. That's hard.
Yeah.
And it's reading into the patient, Those what is it? House or Millis house classification, remember that? I don't know if you that
I think I know what you're
mental
talking
state of the patients that were becoming.
Oh, like the exacting and the all the different those guys, sure.
Those guys.
Like
that was written 1950 or something. And like
bars.
Doctors have struggled with patients that are in the edentulous world for many years, and back then, 1950s, they were like, you should not get into a fight and into it with this patient. That one needs psychological evaluation, which is not something we really do. these days.
No, I've never sent anybody
Consult,
out for
we're
a psych eval.
That looks like a nice person. Sure, let's do the full arch. 3 years later,
Yeah.
you're like, God help me.
Yeah, and it's like this is a complex population. You get quite a spectrum of people, and I mean, the thing is like you're always tempted to just do the arch, and even if you do see some of these red flags, a lot of times you're like, I still want to do the case. Like I still can make a difference in this person's life. Maybe it'll be different, and sometimes you kind of set yourself up for these things. I know I do it.
That happens so many times, and this is another humbling reason why I start the courses that way is like, guys, somebody lift the hand here who hasn't had a complicated patient, and everybody's like, I have, like kind of like throw the first stone if you haven't, Same.
Yeah.
It's like we've all had a patient that you wish you hadn't treated, or at least, and this is part of our teaching, is you reprogram the patient. And reprogramming means saying the right things. Like, hey, listen, this might be forever. This could also not be forever. How long does it last? This could work out perfectly. This could also come back. You get some failed implants. Listen, we're going to have to redo surgery. Oh my God. So it's not like a one and done. Sometimes it's not, and all these things that you have to say when I talk about it in my courses, like make sure you tell the patient this before they get into this. You might be immediate load. There's a possibility you walk out of here with dentures again. Wait a minute, but don't you do cygos and stuff like that? There's a possibility that you walk out of here with dentures. You in it or not,
Yeah.
Those little things, because I had the patient about 6 years ago, man. One time. It happened one time only. I told them, hey, don't worry. I teach about this. I know different techniques. I said, you walk out of here with fixed teeth. I said that, man. I don't know how many people say that. Like, yeah, we're doing fixed, Fixed podcast. But we're doing fixed.
Well, of course it's fixed. You see the light up sign I got in my office. Of course you're walking out with fixed teeth.
The arches. I know all the ways, man.
That's right.
And little did I know, like it was not a butter case. Even cygos. Like I wasn't doing cygos back then, but like it was a butter all throughout case, and I was like,
just push it through. Yeah.
Dentures. Patient wakes up. We had a problem. We had a little argument. Obviously, I didn't argue with the patient. I was just like, listen, I thought case is fine now, but that's the last time I said. This is fixed. I said,
you don't give a guarantee.
You want fixed. We both want fixed,
Yeah.
But we'll see. And my patients, nowadays I get a case, if I do, which is super, super rare, but if I do, that is not fixed. It's like, oh, all right, Dr. Nestor, 3 months with this denture, sure, we'll do it. Wow.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put that too. And like, it's been a while since I haven't loaded a case. I think it's been, maybe a year and a half or so, like maybe something like that. But, I tell the patients like, look, I want you to have the peace of mind. Almost all of our cases walk out of here with fixed teeth, but there is that chance. It's a non-zero probability. But you know what? If things don't go well, then you're just going to go through the same process that everybody was 20 years ago, and it should work out okay. 100%. Like we just have a different approach for that. 100%. And 100%, like, I mean, you have to open the door and let a patient walk through it. You can't just pull them through after the fact, because it's, explaining it after the fact is an excuse. Explaining it beforehand, that's consent. That's letting them know that that's there, so it's not a surprise. And that's one of the best lessons you can learn in full arch is just don't set yourself up for having that really difficult conversation of, hey, I know I said you were going to be good and you're not, and this is why, So yeah, no, that's a great bit there.